What's going on, people? This is Kish Shirley Gamer Nation in the building. And today, we're going to discuss why Marxism fails and why Black Marxists are the most dangerous threat to our community and to our society and to Black America. We're going to begin by dissecting Du Bois' talented 10, a Black intellectual elite to guide the masses. What Du Bois proposed, right? The Negro race, like all races, is going to be saved by its exceptional men. He believed the top 10% of educated, refined Black people should lead the rest. They would shape Black people's culture, moral structure, educational system, religious values, and essentially engineer the race evolution from the top down. That's an elitist model, even if well-intended. It's exactly an elitist model. And it sounds like communism, and it sounds like Marxism, and it sounds like Stalin, right? Because in order for Stalin to get people to move how he wanted them to move, he had to use physical force, which is exactly what happened, right? And we're going to break it down. I don't want to skip too far on my notes. He thought the masses were too uneducated, emotional, or uncultured. Needed a cultivated class to lead them into modernity. Now, you got to remember at the time, Black people were just coming out of slavery during that time, right? So he may have been valid in his speaking because Black people were trying to repair themselves or trying to pick up pieces and build themselves up after slavery, after whatever went on with them during slavery, right? So maybe his thinking process at the time and what he saw in Black people at the time was in a bad condition, correct? Or excuse me, when I said correct, right? So maybe for that time he had a point, and he had some points. My thing is now is that when you have things like Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, when you had various different slave revolts or slave revolutions during that time, I now have to be careful with the way I use revolution, right? I have to define it properly. We'll get into that a bit later on in the video. Black Wall Street was a effort by the common everyday working class Black person to now create a village separate from white America so that now, they can have and define their own destiny. If you look at Black Wall Street is exactly what Marcus Garvey envisioned for Black people, to have their own entrepreneurship, their own stuff, their own banks, their own everything, right? A lot of Black Americans, they don't want to admit that the reason why you have a lot of HBCUs or the idea of HBCUs or Black thriving communities in the South was because of Marcus Garvey's blueprint that he left for y'all to follow, right? Yeah, I don't want to admit that, but it is what it is. But Black Wall Street and many other Black businesses in that Southern Belt came to be from grassroots Black people that were common everyday people. You know what I'm saying? So this is an elitist attitude from W.E. Du Bois that thinking that the majority of Black people are uneducated or stupid or uncultured, which wasn't true, right? If Black people after slavery were the everyday common people and they were able to cultivate themselves and create a culture specific to them, and then create a Black Wall Street, and then create different thriving Black cities and towns, that means that they were fully educated and fully capable of doing that themselves without a top 10% of people dictating that to them. All right. Marx criticized this same structure in capitalism. Karl Marx hated this kind of elite design, even when it was for the people. He critiqued the bourgeoisie for controlling the superstructure, culture, religion, education, and law. The way elites create a worldview that benefit themselves and controls how the lower class think. The manufacturing of consent through institutions, right? So when Du Bois wanted to select a few to control the culture, religion, and education of Black people, he was, in Marxist terms, proposing a Black bourgeoisie superstructure. Even if Du Bois had good intentions, he wanted to engineer Black consciousness from above, not grow organically from below. Now, this is where you get a genetically, in my opinion, from my perspective, or observation. You get a genetically engineered, modified group of black people where you're modifying them to your liking instead of them now planting the soul and the spirit of black people into organic dirt and having them grow organically and then, to yield nutritious fruit, right? And just making sure you pluck in the garden of the weeds and the worms and the parasites and just having it grow organically. You know what I'm saying? Because now in nature, even the flower or the rose, you have roses that are the same, they're roses together or sunflowers together, but they all have their individual personality and the way they look. No bouquet of roses, the roses not the individual roses not going to look like each other. Some are going to be more brighter, some are going to be more taller, more lush, more taller, more greener, right? So even in a rose garden, you're going to have roses that have their own individual likeness and separate from each other. Understand? That's growing something organically. Versus now top down, where you're now going to genetically modify them to look like each other. Understand? The irony, Du Bois, as a socialist, recreated the power dynamic he claimed to oppose. W.E. Du Bois was heavily influenced by socialism later in life. But here's the irony. He distrusted common black folk to determine their future without elite guidance. So, the common black people, he did not trust you. He thought you were stupid, just like how white people in Jim Crow thought a lot of niggas were stupid. And I'm going to show you the connection later on in the video. He wanted to create a class of philosophy kings to shape them, not unlike Plato, not unlike the ruling class Marx despised, right? So even in trying to uplift the race, Du Bois replicated the same top-down control mechanism Marx said was the problem with capitalism. And I'm going to show you why these things are a threat to black people. The flaw, uplift becomes control when you take away freedom. Du Bois' idea didn't always respect the spiritual autonomy, cultural richness, and the organic leadership of working class or rural black communities. Instead, he saw them as needing to be refined, directed, or reconstructed. Reconstructed and built up into what? What do you want to redefine them as? Because the way I see black culture being redefined as today, it's far from what it was back in the 50s, or what they say it was in the 50s. Even from the 80s and the 90s, right? Now, spiritual autonomy and cultural richness. This is what my analogy with the garden, right? Where you could have a bouquet of flowers or a garden of roses or a garden of fruit or apples and oranges, right? That tree has its own autonomy when it's growing. The same oak tree, right? Or the same orange tree has its own autonomy when it's growing. It's going to go into its own individual tree. And then even the fruit that it bears from that tree, they also have their own individual likeness. No two oranges is going to be the same. One is going to be bigger, one might be juicier, one might be more orange. One might have 2 seeds, the other one might have several seeds. So even in nature, capitalism exists, individualism exists, autonomy exists, right? And even when you try to refine it or direct it or reconstruct it in some way, even that reconstruction of it is going to find its own individual thinking. That's what the thing what they fear with AI, right? Like with iRobot, right? Where that one robot had its own autonomy and it can think it on its own. Even though it was created by human beings, it still grew its own consciousness, its own identity. Right? So you can control a thing as much as you want. It's still going to grow into its own. Right? The best you could do, like with capitalism or a constitutional republic like what we have in America, is create rules and regulations to protect the rights of the people and then protect people from other people. That's the best you could do, is create law. Right? And when I say law not to oppress people, law that benefits people by protecting people. So in other words, The nigga that's making six figures or $1 billion, he can't tell me what to do, nor can he violate my rights, nor can I violate his rights. So instead of class, it's law that protects each other instead of class, which is the issue you get with communism. Because even though communism and Marxism goes against class, you create a class structure, and that the class with more power gets to violate the people with less power. But in a constitutional republic, with laws and shit, laws protect the lower class of capitalists from the upper class of capitalists. In other words, if some big time celebrity with $1 million or corporation violate my rights as a human being, I get to sue that corporation. Right? So now, that echoes missionary colonialism. We must civilize the natives, which is what white people were doing. This is what white imperialists were doing. White people, under what they call the Christian Crusades, or what you want to call them, the Manifest Destiny, that's what they were doing. They were going around conquering lands. I forgot what the document was called. Well, they were basically claiming lands from the indigenous people under the doctrine of discovery. You know, if they discover this thing, they're going to now civilize those natives, or they're going to now destroy those natives and take their land from them. It's the same shit, right? European technocracy and communist central planning. The line gets blurry. We're doing it for the people because we're doing it to the people. Final breakdown. What have I just exposed an uncomfortable truth, right? Du Bois talented 10, small elite class of educated blacks. Control education, culture, religion. Meant to uplift the masses, said to be for collective progress. Looks down on the working class. Now, funny enough, Anton Daniels, he doesn't look down on the working class. He looks down on stupid people. He looks down on people, or black people, that even with the opportunities at their fingerprints, want to still play the victim role, want to still be in. So Anton Daniels, he's not an elitist where he thinks he's better than you because you broke. He thinks he's better than you because you're being stupid. You're twerking, you're jumping on top of cars and twerking your ass all day. Or you're a black person, black male, and you have the opportunities to make money in a capitalist society, and you want to keep being broke. All right? Capitalist bourgeoisie per max. Small elite class of wealthy owners. Control education, culture, religion. Meant to pacify or control the masses. Often maintain status quo. Exploits or undervalues the working, right? So, right, this is what Karl Marx was critiquing about capitalism. And it's the same shit that Du Bois wants to do, right? Whereas the capitalist bourgeoisie that Karl Marx is critiquing, he's critiquing the same shit, the same control, the same this, the same that. Du Bois is doing the same thing. He's just repackaging it, right? Even black progressivism can mirror capitalist elitism if it doesn't trust the people to govern themselves. All right? Capitalist elites have power, but within boundaries. A capitalist elite cannot tell the lower capitalist people what to do and how to live. Right? Rule of law, individual rights, property protection, independent courts. This is why Marxism fucking fails, because Marxism says that the capitalism is not oppressing people. But remember, Karl Marx, he was limited to his time and his environment, where it was under the 1800s Great Britain. As capitalism evolved and it came to the American structure and how we do things over here, with a constitutional republic that protects the individual rights of the people, guess what we have? Rule of law, individual rights, property protections, independent courts. Even in things like eminent domain, the government still has to pay those people for the property that they want from those people. They can't just go over there and take it. They got to pay them, right? In America, for example, a billionaire can't force you to work for them. If he lies about you, harms you, violates your contract, you can sue him. If he pollutes your land, exploits your likeness, discriminates against you, he can face consequences. This is where you get I'm an HVAC tech. This is where you get when you have to do a EPA. Let me get my HVAC card right quick. So let me get it right quick. And HVAC, when you do an HVAC, right, to handle refrigerants, you gotta put this certain refrigerant. So if you get an R410A, you have to get a cylinder with a yellow tip on it, like a yellow marking on it, to show you that this is the type of refrigerant you got to put into this type of cylinder, right? When you take it back to get it disposed of correctly. All that is the reason is the result of environmental protection agency, right? Because back in the day, what corporations used to do is that they used to pollute the environment and make it unlivable, right? So now, they create programs like EPA, right? And on it says how to responsibly handle refrigerants as required by EPA's National Recycling and Emissions Reduction Program. All these things is under capitalism, right? These things protects the rights of the people from corporations. And if the corporations violate those rights now, right, you can now sue that corporation or they could get shut down, right? In a functioning capitalist republic, money doesn't override your constitutional rights. That's what makes freedom plus capitalism so powerful. The law, not the class, defines your protection. So regardless of how much money a nigga got, if he do something to me, I could then sue him, and then I could take him to criminal court and then send him to jail, right? Communist elites are above the people and above the law. Now contrast that with communist elite systems. In Marxist leaders regimes, the party becomes the law. There's no competition, no press, no independent judiciary, no private property, right? So now, when you have no competition, right, in a communist society, if have a poor business practice and somebody has a better business practice, say like now McDonald's sells better food, has better health practices than Burger King, and there's no competition to that, Burger King is not going to get themselves better. They're going to still serve you fucked up food, poor customer service, and there's nothing you can do about that because there's no alternative option, right? When there's no press or journalism to expose the bad practices of that business, right? There's no independent judiciary and there's no private property, right? So you can't have your own private property, right? And there's no independent judiciary. This is the problem with communists. There's no checks and balances over there. There's no alternative. You just have to report to this one thing. So if Communist Party official kills your family, seizes your land, lies to the public, forces you to work for free, there's no legal system, no vote, and no court to hold him accountable. The system protects itself, not the people. This is state-enforced elitism, where the ideology shields the powerful. Communist elites don't just exploit, they erase your right to resist. Didn't this happen during slavery with black people? Where black people on a plantation, right? They were able to kill your family. You didn't have private property. You didn't have land, right? Didn't this what happened in Jim Crow, where white people were able to lie to the public and their whiteness protected them even though they were in the wrong? Why the fuck would W.E. Du Bois and black people that believe in the ideology want black America to believe in that or to work with that? I'm telling you, communism mimics that of slavery. And black people who are in that Marxist state of mind, they want to be the one to crack the whip against other black people. Capitalist elites can be dethroned through markets or law. That's the key point you're making, right? I'm making. In capitalism, elites rise and fall based on market forces, public opinion, lawsuits, accountability, innovation. So in other words, if an elite person like P.C. Richards have bad practices, I'm not forced to work there. I can quit that job and create my own business and compete with them and innovate, right? Accountability, you can sue that person. They can be put out of business. When you talk about the market, what's the market forces? Me. Me and you, the buyer and the seller, what do you call it? What do you call it? The supply and demand. If I'm no longer demanding this thing, or if I see that this product you're selling to me is stupid, I'm not going to keep demanding it. And you're going to go broke trying to supply something that the market, don't want. Right? You can outperform, outcompete, or outvote them. In other words, a capitalist elite can lose everything. A communist elite can't be touched unless the system collapses itself. So black people who want to be dictated to 10, you can't hold them accountable because they're going to have power. You already can't do that today. They just do it in a different way. They use social shaming, right? If you don't want to date a black woman or a dark-skinned black woman, according to Dr. Umar Johnson, you ain't black. You're a colorist. So they're using ideologies and academia to shame you. That's how they gain power in a black elite communist version of it. See, at least a black elite in a capitalist version of it, you can hold them accountable to something. You can outperform them. You can innovate and outcompete them. True capitalism plus freedom equals individual power. If a capitalist bothers me, I can sue him. That is real individual agency. You're not relying on a revolution. You don't need to wait for a riot. You don't need to beg the state, which is what a lot of black people do in America. You're relying on some revolution that's never going to come. Wait for Black Lives Matter to riot, and you keep begging the welfare for shit. You can get off your ass and go create your own job and make your own money. Now, what I will admit about with Black Americans now, right, which is what a lot of Jamaican niggas miss. In Black America, you had redlining, you had Jim Crow. Every time when Black Americans created a something like a Black Wall Street, white people would go blow it up. And mind you, when Black Americans had things like a Black Wall Street created, this is where Black people were traditionally refined. They were going according to what that environment was, which was being traditional. And white people still went and fucked them up, blew it up, and bombed Black Wall Street twice, right? Now, because of that, and white America didn't honor that or respect their rights or give them justice, right, according to the law, that's what caused Black people now, into this day and age, to say they don't want to compete in the capitalist structure because white people failed them. White people didn't honor the work that they were doing. No, mind you, this is a time where where white people telling Black people nigga bathroom versus white bathroom. So Black people say, okay, cool, we're gonna create our own stuff, and white people still want to fuck with them. So this is what a lot of Caribbean Blacks got to understand. Now, Black Americans, this is to you. What Caribbean Blacks has a truth in what we're saying and what they're saying is that, okay, cool, Black Wall Street got bombed or it got blew up. That doesn't mean you should now turn to the welfare state to be your answer. That still doesn't mean you should now wait on some type of revolution or wait for some savior to come save you. You still pick up the pieces and you keep it going. Which is in Jamaica, that's what they're in poverty countries in Jamaica, that's what they're forced to do. Like in Jamaica, you cannot sit and wait for somebody to give you food. You got to get up and you got to go get the food yourself. So I think that's what the misunderstanding between the two groups are. All right. You can use a system, civil court, constitutional protection, class action lawsuits, free speech, alternative employment, entrepreneurship. This is personal sovereignty. That's the kind of power Marx never envisioned because he didn't believe regular people could compete without state planning, which is what W.E. Du Bois misses. All right. Now, again, from W.E. Du Bois's mind state in that time, the Constitution, even though the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was there to protect the rights of Black people, white people that were in power, they didn't enforce that when it came to Black people being done wrong in America, right? When it comes to entrepreneurship, like you say, becoming a barber, right? Angry Man brings this up, and I remember when Angry Man pointed it out. I remember my older brother trying to become a barber back in the 90s and the 2000s. I remember that. right? When it came to barbershop, when you come into being a barber, they started to pass laws or certain criteria in order for you to become a barber. Because what happened was you had a lot of brothers that were coming out of prison and they couldn't work regular, they weren't able to get regular certain jobs. So they just became barbers and they were making money and gaining capital from them, right? So what happened was, sneakingly or suspiciously, the government started passing new criterias for you to become a barber. You know, shit like, you know, you can't have a criminal record, shit like you can't be on child support, stupid shit like that. So because of these things, black people, and then whenever black people would have their free speech and when they would speak on certain things, that also was shunned by the dominant society, which was white people. So you know what I'm saying? So all of these things, I just want to let white people know that you give capitalism and this constitutional republic a bad name whenever you see black people being done wrong. And instead of you looking at it, okay, from a legal, lawful standpoint, you're going to now look at it as race. And then you don't take the system to give black people the fair justice that they need. Then it creates people like Karl Marx to now whisper into black people's ears and then use them to turn against the system. You know what I'm saying? So white people, you got to understand that. Because there's plenty of black Americans and Caribbean blacks that are heavy in entrepreneurship, thanks to Marcus Garvey. You know what I'm saying? So let's get it. Final word. Capitalist elite must compete in a fair market, can be sued, exposed, replaced, cannot control your personal life, limited by constitutional rights, rise and fall based on merit or business cycles. The problem isn't elites, the problem is elites without accountability, right? Communist elite, assigned power by the party, protected by ideological authority, can dictate personal, religious, and economic choices, above the law and the people, maintain control through fear, censorship, and repression. Isn't that what black people like Dr. Umar Johnson does, right? And white people on the left do? You know, they try to shame and shame men and black men by calling you toxic masculinity, right? Dr. Umar Johnson tries to shame black men. You ain't a real black person if you don't date a certain type of black woman, or if you don't fit a certain type of ideology that black culture said black men should be. Isn't that not what they do? Correct me if I'm lying. Marxism undermines the individual black journey. You're taking away my individuality. You're taking away my right to decide for myself. You don't know what I need. Only I know what I know that. Only you black people, common everyday black people, only you know the truth about yourself. You know what you need. Only you can tell yourself that. Only you can find out where you're lacking and how to improve on yourself. Only you can say that. You can take all the advices from everybody else, but you have to make a decision on what works for you and what's going to make you propel yourself in the game called life, right? Marxist thinking, whether it comes from a white professor, a left-leaning think tank, or woke activist in the black community, often says the collective knows what's best. You're not smart enough to define freedom. We must re-engineer your values for the greater good. But here's a deep contradiction. That some people who claim to be for the people don't trust the people to think, build, or lead for themselves, right? That's a contradiction. So now let me ask you a question. How do we know that the top 10% know what's good? If you can't trust the people, how do you trust the top 10%? Why should the people trust the top 10%? The same way you can't trust the common everyday person. Why should a common everyday person trust the top 10% of people? Why black Marxists are especially dangerous. They want you to find how black people should move according to their vision and why that's terrifying. They replace white colonial control with black ideological control. They use race pride language to sell groupthink. They don't respect spiritual differences, family structure, cultural diversity, or individual callings. This is why they don't like Jamaican niggas, right? Because Jamaican niggas, we define our own blackness through capitalism, right? If you listen to a lot of Jamaican niggas talk, self-reliance, get up and go work, or get up on your own feet and pick up yourself. That's capitalism, right? So this is why a lot of black people or FBA who are Marxists, they don't like Jamaican niggas, because a lot of FBA niggas, they're Marxists in their thinking and left in their thinking. Caribbean blacks, how we define our blackness is not that way, right? And Jamaicans, we put nationality first before race. And the reason being is because if I'm a black Jamaican, but I'm broke, but the other black Jamaican and he's rich, I don't have a hate for him and he don't have a hate for me, because what? We're both Jamaican. And especially if you put it in a capitalistic framework, where now, even though I'm broke, I have the opportunity to make that money and get to the same space as a Jamaican who has more money than me. And a Jamaican nigga that got more money than me, he's not feeling threatened by me because I can make my own money as an individual. So let's get it. The authors saying traditionalism, masculinity, heterosexual norms, or Afro-Christian foundations all under the banner of progress. So it becomes mental colonization by black faces using Marxist methods. If you don't follow their definition of black liberation, they treat you like the enemy. This is how they treat a lot of Caribbean blacks, or even black Americans within the black American culture that don't follow Marxism, right? That's not freedom. That's intellectual tyranny in blackface. Remember, it's intellectual tyranny in blackface, masked in academic language. By the way, this is why a lot of people within black culture that's into open relationships is trying to condition black men into. So now if a guy who's pranking you comes up and talks to your girl on the street, and you now punch him in the face or you fuck him up, they say you're insecure and you should just be comfortable with some random dude you don't know approaching your chick to talk to your girl, right? The reason why they're doing that is because Marxism looks at traditional relationships as a microcosm of capitalism and patriarchy, right? Because in a relationship now, if I'm gatekeeping my girl from outside influences, my girl that I'm dating or I'm in a relationship with, she belongs to me. She's private property to me. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gatekeeping that, right? So now if I'm gatekeeping that in a traditional sense, Marxist ideology wants you to be open, right? And then look at situations like that as a microcosm, as I said earlier, as capitalism or patriarchy. So that's why they pushing open relationships and non-monogamy and sex culture into black culture, into black community, or into American society as a whole, right? Come up with a constitution of laws, rules, and structure, add a system with honor codes and morality, and then a monetary system that allows people to contribute and grow, right? So this is what I mean. This is natural human society, spiritually rooted, moral order, respect, honor, hierarchy, right? Legal structure, constitution, rights, courts, economic opportunity, capitalism, property, innovation. Individual freedoms, you get to choose your path. That's what Marxism ignores: the complexity of human nature and the need for layered structure, not centralized control. You're not saying chaos. Well, this is me saying it, right? I'm not saying chaos. I'm saying structure with choice equals structure with choice, which is how every healthy civilization starts, right? You got to give spiritual root and moral order. Where's the moral order come from? That comes from your household, your family. Then you put a legal structure to protect that family and to protect that man and his woman and his child. Then you give them economic opportunity. What does that prevent? And that prevents another person trying to rob me, because we both have the same opportunity to make money, right? Then I have my property, then I can innovate, and then I can pass down my knowledge to my son or to my daughter, and then I can pass. Then now my daughter and my son, they don't have to worry about buying a house because I passed them something so they can live in. So they don't have to worry about that, right? And then you have individual freedom protected by spirituality, moral order, respect, honor, and then a legal structure, and then an economic opportunity. All this is hierarchy and stages, bottom up. This is how you build a house. Do you build a building from the top down or from the bottom up? Right? Human beings are flawed, which is why power must be checked. These people are very flawed. Their belief system may not align with my purpose exactly, right? You can't have the top 10% of human beings talk about they're trying to dictate everybody, and you can't check them when human beings are wrong, right? That's why no one, not even black elite, not even the educated few, should have unchecked power to design black future. They're not God. They're not spiritual infallible. They're not above culture, bias, or ego. Freedom means I get to follow my creator, my calling, and my conscience, not your collectivist framework, right? I shouldn't have to follow your fucking group if I don't agree with your group. Right? Now, I will say this. We have to respect how a community wants to run their shit. Like, for example, I am not going to dictate to the Amish that they're outdated. If they're I'll critique them from the outside, but I'm not going to go into their community and tell them they're wrong. Because obviously they like how they live and they've been living around for a long time. So I'm not going to fuck with them. So, as people, just like we want them to respect our individuality, we got to respect that community and how they set their laws and how they want to live. So long as they're not violating human rights and they're not bothering other people. All right. Karl Marx versus human nature, a fatal flaw. Marx did go against human nature. He just refined how people should be. But that's the problem. You can't build a system that denies individual, shames ambition, erases hierarchy, forces sameness, destroys tradition, without creating misery, rebellion, or failure. And that's exactly what happened in every Marxist regime, from Stalinist Russia to Maoist China to the Black Panthers, internal collapse. Because remember, the Black Panther Party, they were Marxists or socialists. Right? And they had that same shit. That's why they're not here. That's why they're a weaker shell of their former selves. I don't care who get mad. Final framework. You're not rejecting community. You're protecting the rights to be free within it. Marxist black thinker. We must engineer the culture for liberation, spiritual guidance. The group defines you. The state or elite knows best, more tradition. Individualism is a lie of capitalism. Your framework. Let the culture evolve through structure, freedom, and spiritual guidance. You define yourself within a society of honor, not oppression. Each man walks his own path under law, under God, and within. Individually is part of creation, it's divine. And I explained that to y'all in the analogy earlier with the garden. In a garden, you can have a watermelon garden. There's going to be watermelons that are bigger, sweeter, more juicier, and contain more seeds than the other watermelon. Because each fruit or tree is its own individual. So individuality is divine. Let's break it down. Right? So this is what they say. You're not smart enough to define freedom for yourself. The collectivism knows best. This is not empowerment. It's authoritarianism wrapped in activism. Now, I use an analogy of what happened to Malcolm X, right? When young Malcolm told his white teacher he wanted to be a lawyer, the teacher told him that's no realistic goal for a nigger. Instead, him toward manual labor instead. It wasn't about his ability. It was about limiting his ambition to fit the system's expectation of what a black man should be. I'm going to say this again. It wasn't about his ability. It was about limiting his ambition to fit the system's expectation of what a black man should be. And you have Negroes in black culture that wants to do the same shit as a Jim Crow white person. What some modern black Marxists do, they say things like you're not smart enough to define freedom. What the fuck makes you smart enough to define freedom, Marxist? You can't define what's freedom for me. You only think you're free because capitalism lied to you. Define how capitalism lied to what. So if Marxism wants to define what's good for me, that's taking my freedom away from me. And how is capitalism a lie? I explained to you how capitalism is in a lie earlier, right? The collective must decide what's best for the people, not the individual. So when you say the collective, does that mean the whole people collective or top 10% of individuals defining what it is for the group? Remember, it's the top 10% of individuals defining what it is the best for the people, not individuals. Listen to that logic. This is the same colonial arrogance wearing a different costume. It replaces the white overseer with black ideological gatekeeper, which is what's going on right now. This is what Dr. Umar Johnson tries to do. Niggas like him. Why it's so dangerous? It crushes individual sovereignty, especially for men trying to lead, build, and define their own vision. It denies natural hierarchy based on effort, wisdom, spiritual purpose, and replacing it with mob rule or elite control. I would never bow down to a talented tent. Fuck you, niggas. You could call me all kind of banana boats and tethers. Fuck you. I'm not bowing down to that. It weaponizes intellect and academia to shame or gaslight regular people who want to live free. It mirrors Jim Crow logic, where few people decide what black folks can and cannot become. You understand that if you're a straight traditional black man, you're considered as toxic. If you're a straight traditional black woman, they call you a pygmy. If you are, but what they decide is the definition of blackness is King Von or Little Dirk, or Glorilla, or Meg Thee Stallion. What black culture or these Marxist motherfuckers define to black men and black women, what a black woman is Meg Thee Stallion lying on niggas and sending niggas to prison and lying and still being free. What defined to you as a black man is a LGBT nigga, a gay nigga, an emotionally weak black male, a simp, a panda bear. That's what they define to us as what a black man is. A submissive black nigga that's gonna kiss the black ass of a black woman. That's what they defining it for you. And anybody that steps out of that framework, he's a toxic nigga. He's a misogynistic nigga, using the same fucking language that white people use. But I'm supposed to bow down to that. You mirroring Jim Crow logic, but I'm supposed to trust the talented tent or what they're supposed to tell me what black nigga, what it is to be black? Just as Malcolm X was told he couldn't define his own ambition, today's black Marxists tell the modern black man he cannot define his own freedom. I will never bow down to any of you or follow that. I would never follow that. My forebears, my Jamaican ancestors who had to fight oppression in Jamaica and had to fight the slavery that they fought over there, didn't survive that for 300 years to now come now and bow down to a black hand that's oppressing me. Black Americans in Black America who had to fight 400 years of fighting white people didn't come now to this state of freedom to now bow down to a black hand of oppression because they're black. No. Y'all are bunking. So let me get to the next slide right quick. Oh, nigga. Give me a second. In time as I get better, I'm going to try to work better with the graphics. And I might do a separate video of this by itself. So add this to save. Marcus Garvey promoted self-reliance, individual economic power, biblical morality, and grassroots leadership. Marxists influenced black thinkers, the boys talented tent, modern black academics, activists often believe the collective should define identity, direction, and freedom for the people, meaning a smaller group gets to decide for the masses. The Garveyite tradition respects the common man's sovereignty, the Marxist tradition often wants to engineer the people toward an idea. The new overseer, this is in my words, the Marxist-leaning black elite simply want to be the new whip holders, replacing white colonists, colonial overseers with black ideological ones. These are control agents disguised as liberators, not liberators in spirit, but managers of acceptable black behavior. And like I said earlier, what's the acceptable black behavior? A King Von, Little Durk, a Meg Thee Stallion, a Glorilla, well, a black nigga that's running around here being stupid. Whatever black male that's out here that's like a Dr. Umar Johnson, like a Derek Jackson, you know, nigga gang banging, that's what they accept as a black man. And the reason why they accept gang banging black niggas as acceptable for black masculinity is because them niggas die. Them niggas shoot, gang bang, go to prison and die. So they know if black men are following that, now they know that's a better way to get rid of black men, because the standard of black masculinity and black culture has always been the gang banging nigga, the thug nigga, and they know that those niggas go to jail or dead or lose their freedom. So culture warfare. Over the past 70 years, especially the last 30, Marxist feminist scholars or influencers have pushed it to redefine black masculinity, leadership, and spirituality. Traditional men, particularly those who embrace biblical order, independence, and capitalist ambition, are seen as threats because they don't submit to collectivist, matriarchal, or activist-defined models. Caribbean Jamaican black identity, Jamaicans, especially those shaped by Garveyism, tend to value personal dignity, self-employment, family legacy, godly order, resistance to external control, which is everything that black Americans before the 1960s believed in. There's really no difference. It's just that with Jamaican black identity, because we're in a impoverished because of our history, we believe in those things even more because we understand that, we don't want to be fall under the structure or be enslaved by other people. Remember, just like black Americans were trying to pick up the pieces after slavery, Jamaican blacks or Caribbean blacks was trying to do the same shit. This often clashes with the mainland American Marxist educated black class, who view the self-definition as dangerous or non-compliant. The metaphor of Benjamin, the howling wolf, is perfect. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf in the morning, and he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil, right? So Jamaican blacks or Caribbean blacks often emulate, like what the Hebrew Israelites say, that of the spirit of Benjamin, the howling wolf, right? Because the wolf speaks of independence, and Jamaicans have a warrior spirit, right? You know, you talk about the Maroons and the war between Taki and the Maroons and the resistance of a lot of the slave rebellions that took place on Jamaica. We typically have that warrior independent, and we speak independence. We want that independence, right? Marxist ideology, they don't like that, because now if Benjamin go talk to the black American who's the tribe of Judah, he go, yo, Benjamin, what the fuck you doing? You a lying, nigga. You a fucking lying. Wake your ass up. Which if you notice, Benjamin in the form of Marcus Garvey or a Malcolm X, because his father was a Garveyite and his mother was Caribbean, or a Minister Farrakhan. A lot of the Nation of Islam brothers, a lot of them are Caribbean. Minister Farrakhan, I think he's from St. Kitts, so he's Trinidadian. A lot of Benjamin came to Black America, who was Judah, who was asleep, and tried to wake them up. But oftentimes, Judah rejects Benjamin in favor of other ideologies. Right?